Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. I am Brian Bandley, a member of this church. It's July 15th, 2022, and with me today is our guest speaker, Caron Carnahan. Caron is a commissioned lay minister at Ginger Hill UU congregation in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. She is serving her third term on the board of the UU's Greater Pittsburgh as intermediate past president and as UU Justice PA's Congregation Liaison Coordinator. For the past 3 years, Caron's ministry has focused on the UUA's proposed 8th principle and works to create a beloved community that is free from racism and oppression. We're so glad you've chosen to be with us this morning. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome. We are working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has dug into the fabric of life. I'm live in our sanctuary, along with some in person and those on YouTube. I have with me today volunteers and staff, all working to bring this worship to you. On behalf of this team, thank you for being with us. If this is your first time with us, we would love to be in touch with you. If you have not already done so, please go to our welcome desk in the atrium, or if you're on YouTube, visit our website. Just Google First Unitarian of Pittsburgh and sign up for our weekly newsletter found at the bottom of the page. You're also invited to join us for social time on Zoom following this live worship. To get a Zoom link, please send an email to firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com. If you're here in person, there will be a social hour in the garden after the service. Please pick up some refreshments in the Schweitzer room and join us outside. I invite you to take a deep breath, arrive in body and spirit, and picture yourself connected to all others who are watching today and in the future. We turn to our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to light it at this time. We light this chalice in the name of hope, love, peace, and justice. In the words of Melanie David, if ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. May this flame burn bright in your heart and mind as we worship together.
Morning. Come, you accidental pilgrims, you who find yourself on a journey of surprise and wonder. Come, you who emerge into this place as an act of liberation. Come, you who seek a life of mindfulness and a place to test your thoughts. Come, you who bring hearts of all kinds, heavy hearts, rusty hearts, hearts broken open in revelation, hearts full of love to share. Come, you who seek courage, and you who have more courage than you realize. Come, you who stand behind the curtain, gathering up the resources to claim your truth. Come, you who have been in a bubble, you who are poised for transformation. We begin our story again, gathering courage, love, mindfulness, and a sense of purpose. We gather as people of all ages, of different abilities, different backgrounds, and different perspectives. We share a covenant, a direction for our shared journey, and a commitment to encourage and challenge one another to spiritual growth. This path will ask much from us. Let us move forward with love. Let us move forward with appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing that we are not alone. Whoever you are, Whatever your gifts, you are welcome to join this journey.
Rise in body or spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, hymn 361. Please be seated. The story for all today is a book called Goodnight Racism by Ibram Kendi. You may have heard of Ibram Kendi. He's written several books, many for adults, How to Be Anti-Racist, How to Raise an Anti-Racist, and Beginning the Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. Outside the window, peeking down from the night sky, the moon watches over us. She sees kids smiling at dinner tables and yawning in their beds. But some kids do not have food, do not have beds, because of unfair rules and unjust treatment. The moon sees all kids, whoever they are, wherever they are, and shines her light on them. The moon wants her light to kiss every child goodnight. The moon delights when every child falls asleep. Because the moon knows when we sleep, we dream. When we dream, we imagine what is possible, what the world can be, and the moon glows a little brighter, whispering, "Dream, my child. Imagine, my child, a new world, a new future awaits." A world where all people are safe, no matter how they look. How they worship, or how they love. A world where all kids have the same chance to have peace, to have joy, to have a childhood. A world where all people breathe fresh air and have what they need to feed their minds and bodies. A world where our rules open doors, open minds, and create equity and justice for all. Dream, my child. Create, my child. A new world, a new future awaits. Good night, unfair rules. Good night, cruelty. Good night, injustice. Good night, inequality. Good night, hate. Good night, hurt. Good night, racism. Please rise and join me in singing our hymn 1018 in the Teal hymnal, Come and Go With Me.
Our religious community is made up of volunteers and staff, creating and hosting a variety of programming, even as we stay safe during this time of pandemic. We rely on your financial support. Please take time to reflect on your ability to financially support this community. Donations by check may be mailed to the church office. Electronic donations can be made online through the church website or by texting GIVE to 412-435-1050 and following the instructions.
There's always a light when we are ready to see it. There's always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to see it. There's always a light in the dark when we are ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and to climb this hill. Together we will. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to be it, to see the light, be the light, raise our eyes in the dark of night and to climb this hill. Together we will. Shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness. Be the light.
We hold each other in our hearts and minds with all our joys and all our sorrows. Audrey Masaladon's brother, Eric Gear, passed away this Thursday, July 14th. He died of complications resulting from COVID. Eric had a lifetime of health struggles, but they never dampened his enthusiasm for life or his infectious sense of humor. He was a wonderful brother and will be sorely missed. We remember those who are experiencing losses of all kinds and those facing health challenges. We are aware that many are faced with heightened difficulties presented by these times that continue to be challenging for us all. May we find joy in our connections with each other and in the pleasures that life holds. Let us continue to care for one another and for ourselves in all the ways we can. We hold each other in our hearts and minds with all our joys and all our sorrows, whether spoken or unspoken. Let us take a moment to be quiet together. Prayer for While in the Struggle by Margalie Belazaire. Spirit of light and love, spirit of resistance, spirit of generosity, that which serves as our conscience in this work, that we do to dismantle white supremacy, to empower the marginalized, to insist that Black lives matter. We have been angered, we have been saddened, we have been pushed to the brink once more. We are also inspired and seem resolved to do better this time, to not simply get to the other side of this moment, but to get there morally healthier. To get a safer space for Black bodies, Spirit, help us to understand that we each have a role in justice work, for our liberations are tied to one another's. Give us the clarity of mind to know what our individual part is in the struggle, that there are many ways to protest injustice. Help us to find our way and commit to it. Spirits, we ask for guidance. Send us strength and endurance. Help us to give our all to this and hold nothing back, for precious lives depend on it. We will be imperfect. Rest assured that we will mess up over and over again, and we must do it anyway. May we summon the courage to tear down the system of injustice and get busy creating a world community with justice for all. May it be so. Amen.
So if you all could turn to your bulletins if you wish, and just briefly look at those words. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. And I will teach you that line, and you join in as you're able. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy and love. I know myself, I am enough. I see myself in joy. I know I am enough. I see in joy. I know myself, I am enough.
Do not be alone now. Gather together. Gathering together grows courage in ourselves and in others who see the numbers swelling. It is a small thing, but right now it is an important thing. Great sources of wisdom remind us, just because you cannot stem the tide of all hate, it is still right to do the right thing you can do. These things add up. Your one thing and my one thing. His one thing and their one thing. And her one thing. Together, it becomes a big thing. Do not be alone right now. Any liberation, all liberation, is collective liberation. My freedom is bound with yours and yours with mine, inextricably. Let us together cast our lots doing this big thing, bending the moral arc of the universe towards justice.
I'm happy to be with you this morning as you begin your congregational discernment around the Unitarian Universalist Association's proposed eighth principle. Preparing for this work is a challenge, requiring a considerable amount of reflection and soul searching, both as a congregational body and as individual souls. So what is the language of the proposed eighth principle? We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. The Eighth Principle Project is a grassroots movement started in 2013, aimed at articulating a commitment to dismantle racism and other forms of oppression with the covenants made between and within the member congregations of the UUA. Dr. Paula Cole-Jones, then the Joseph Priestley District's Director of Racial and Social Justice, believed that there existed two different paradigms in Unitarian Universalism: the seven principles and beloved community. Beloved community, a goal of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, abilities, sexual orientation backgrounds and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and in the broader world. So that's the goal. After working with congregations on these issues for over 15 years, Paula realized that a person can believe that they are being a good UU and following the seven principles without thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. She noted that most UU congregations are primarily European American in membership, in culture, particularly music, and leadership, even when located near diverse communities. She realized that an eighth principle was needed to correct this, and working with Bruce Pollock Johnson of the UU Church of the Restoration, at that time, now it's called the UUs of Mount Airy in Philadelphia, wrote the initial draft. It was incorporated into the Church of the Restoration's covenant and was formally adopted in 2017. They then recommended that the UUA adopt it. The urgent need for the eighth principle came to a head in 2017. The UUA had just gone through a crisis related to inclusive hiring practices, especially related to whites being hired over highly qualified Latinx candidates, resulting in the resignation of UUA President Reverend Peter Morales. In response to this crisis, the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, or BLUE, and the Diverse Revolutionary UU Ministries, DRUM, groups endorsed the eighth principle. The number of adoptions has grown steadily since then. As of May 18th of this year, 218 congregations and UU-affiliated groups have adopted the eighth principles, with numbers continuing to grow. Now, there's a very specific process the UUA must follow to add a new principle. Here's how it works. The seven principles are part of the Article 2 Principles and Purposes section of the UUA bylaws. Member congregations promise each other in covenant to affirm and promote these principles. The Article 2 Study Commission is a function of the bylaws for the periodic review of the covenant between member congregations. In consultation with the General Assembly, the UUA Board of Trustees charged the Article 2 Study Commission to include the essence of the eighth principle. Adopting the eighth principle at the local level is an act of covenant making amongst the members of that congregation to be anti-racist. The covenant between congregations can be shaped by engaging in the Article 2 Study Commission process and voting on the amended Article 2 at the 2023 and 2024 General Assemblies. In June of 2020, the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change, in their 2020 report titled Widening the Circle of Concern, you may have seen this, lovely blue guide, stressed that Unitarian Universalists have a theological imperative to be anti-racist and to actively work to dismantle systems of oppression. The Commission specified that our faith traditions as Unitarians and Universalists require us to address equity, inclusion, and diversity issues. Our Universalist heritage calls us to establish the kingdom of God in this life, and that a loving God would not condemn a portion of humanity to eternal damnation. That mandate calls upon us to address issues of equity, inclusion, and diversity. Our Unitarian tradition calls on us to discern truth based on facts, reasoning, and investigation. Our religious ancestors believed not only in the ability of each one of us to discover our own truth, but also in the ability to find real truth in the context of our lives. The original Humanist Manifesto also supports this inquiry. It stressed that, and I quote, "We assert that humanism will affirm life rather than deny it, seek to elicit the possibilities of life, not flee from them, and endeavor to establish the conditions of a satisfactory life for all, not merely for a few. By this positive morale and intention, humanism will be guided. And from this perspective and alignment, the techniques and efforts of humanism will flow." End quote. The Commission on Institutional Change stressed the need to examine existing systems of oppression, particularly white supremacy culture within the UUA and in our congregations. Learning about and ultimately acknowledging the existence of white supremacy culture and systemic racism has a steep learning curve. My home church, Ginger Hill Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Slippery Rock, has been on this path for about 3 years now, and we are still deep in the work. Just recently, we had some discomfort and misunderstanding around the vocabulary routinely used in this work. We were watching a video of a talk Reverend Sunshine Wolf had given in which they used the term white supremacy culture. During our congregational reflections time, a surprising number of our folks had confused the term white supremacy culture with the term white supremacist and appeared triggered by it. Many perceived that they were being called white supremacists. After the service, it was agreed that we needed to delve deeper into the vocabulary used in our work in dismantling white supremacy culture. We decided that a good place to begin was to develop a familiarity with the terminology so that it would become second nature and less uncomfortable. So we started with the hot button issues. Top of the list, the term white supremacy culture. Racial equity trainer Tima Okun defines it as, quote, "the explicit, to subtle ways that the norms, preferences, and fears of white, European-descended people overwhelmingly shape how we organize our work and institutions, see ourselves and others, interact with one another and with time, and make decisions, end quote. In our society, the dominant culture that shapes our institutions, our media, the way we see ourselves and each other is that of the white middle class. Okun suggests that the characteristics of white dominant culture can be harmful, not in and of themselves, but when they are used as norms and standards without being proactively named or chosen by the group. These attitudes and behaviors can show up in any group or any organization, whether it is white-led, predominantly white, or people of color-led, or predominantly people of color. Another hot-button issue is that of white fragility. Author Robin DiAngelo writes, "In a nutshell, it's the defensive reactions so many white people have when our racial worldviews, positions, or advantages are questioned or challenged. For a lot of white people, just suggesting that being white has meaning will trigger a deep defensive response. And that defensiveness serves to maintain both our comfort and our positions in a racially inequitable society from which we benefit." An important part of the internal work is personal. The 2020 report of the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change noted a distinction between admitting oppression exists and recognizing one's own culpability or complicity in it. It notes, the ability to recognize and acknowledge instances of a system, of oppression is not sufficient for the work of transformation. Recognizing your role and complicity in maintaining and continuing the oppressive system is the next step to interrupting and dismantling to build a new way. So I'd like to share a part of my own personal journey with you, following yet another sip of water. Kansas City is my hometown. From an early age, I loved my city with its beautiful boulevards and fountains, the downtown skyscrapers, the country club plaza with its elegant design. I should just stop here. Have any of you been to Kansas City? Yes. You should go. I embraced its gentility and its charm. I also loved the city's well-defined black neighborhoods and was intrigued by the rougher ones. As a teenager, I drove around these neighborhoods, people watching, and was astounded to learn that the billboards there showed black folks and advertised products and services specifically for the black community. Now, I grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City, in Johnson County, Kansas, where the mostly middle-class white folks had access to comfortable housing, good infrastructure, and public schools that were held in high esteem. When the UUA's General Assembly was held in Kansas City in 2018, I happily returned home. Just for grins, I signed up for a pre-assembly narrated bus tour of the town. During that tour, my pride and love for my city, and with it, much of the fabric of my own identity, unraveled. I learned that much of the beauty was the result of local developer J.C. Nichols' plan to create upscale housing and shopping for the upper middle class, and created contracts that included clauses to ensure that no blacks could buy in. So this is the Country Club Plaza area. I learned that the largely black part of town had been created by conniving real estate agents who would sell houses to black families and then tell the neighbors that they had moved in, and the neighborhood was becoming one of those. White flight away from this city began. Many whites moved to suburban Kansas, to Johnson County. Both sets of my grandparents were white flighters. My parents became beneficiaries of this insidious practice. The entirety of my 30-year residency, I benefited from it. Then, of course, that's when white fragility set in. I fell apart during General Assembly. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings. I had thought I was anti-racist, yet, in truth, I was the very embodiment of these horrible practices and the definition of white privilege. Finally, I sought out the chaplains. I needed to weep, to grieve, to be forgiven. When I entered the chaplain's space, I was welcomed by a warm, inviting chaplain of color. I was horrified, not that she was black, but because of the nature of my issue. How could I share my issue with her, who was no doubt the recipient of so much white BS? I cried, I apologized, I wondered how she could carry on each day knowing that she inherited all the racism and prejudice of the past, and I asked what I could do to help. Her words literally changed my life. She said, and I quote, "Don't worry about us. We'll take care of ourselves. You tell your friends." And that's what I've been doing ever since. Because of my inherited white privilege, I was complicit. Those of us who identify as having white European ancestry are the children of colonizers. White supremacy culture began the moment that Europeans stepped onto the shores of the Americas and began subjugating the indigenous population. And it began in 1619 when the first slaves were brought to the colony at Jamestown. So am I personally to blame? No. Are any of you to blame? No. But because of the events of history, white supremacy culture exists. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Falling apart or being fragile doesn't help anyone. We cannot change the past. The only question is, how are we going to deal with the present and the future? You all are in a defining moment in your history as a congregation. What will your legacy be?
Please rise in body or spirit as we sing hymn 148, Let Freedom Span Both East and West.
Freedom span both east and west, and up both south and north.
Please join me in reading the words spoken in UU churches around the country as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Hear now the benediction. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of a shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. We are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be, and we here are reborn, forged by a greater courage. Let us move from this place, encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead. May it be so. Amen.